Okay, so in this video I'm going to talk about some saws, some bits, and some jigs that you might be using in carpentry or woodworking. So this is another one, my second in the series of carpentry tool or woodworking tool videos. Okay, so first of all, let's talk about some bits. Drill bits are a common thing. This one is a masonry bit. You can tell a masonry bit because it has a reinforced tip on it so that it can cut through the concrete. This one is for a rotary hammer, so you can drill pretty good sized holes with that masonry bit. The next one is this auger bit. This one's a 3/4 inch auger bit with the spiral, so it grabs hold and it pulls the bit through. If you're doing a little bit of wiring or running some PEX, this would be the perfect auger bit for that job. Okay, the next one is a Forstner bit. This is a Forstner bit, or they call them a multi-spar bit. It's for drilling a flat bottom hole or drilling a good size hole, because they come in various sizes from like a 1/4 inch to 3 or 4 inches in size. Okay, so that's a Forstner bit or a multi-spar bit because it's got all these extra cutting teeth on here. The next one is a spade or a paddle bit. Depending where you come from, they call them different names. I call them a spade bit. Again, it's for drilling bigger holes. You have a twist bit, high-speed twist bit sometimes they're called, just for drilling a standard hole. This one is a brad point bit. There are two different types of brad point bits, one for hardwoods and one for softwoods, so make sure that if you're using hardwoods or softwoods, you're using the correct brad point bit for that. Okay. The next one is a drill countersink combination. So you get different size drill bit that will fit into this countersink. It'll drill a hole, and then when you put your screw in, the countersink's already there. You don't have to go back and worry about that. So drill bit with a countersink combination. Okay, this bit is used in a mortise machine for cutting mortises. So it's got the drill bit that cuts the hole, and then you got the square edges that cut the square part of the mortise. So when you put the mortise and tenon, or the tenon into the mortise, then it will be nice and square. Okay. So let's look at some saw blades. Now, there's generally 3 different types of saw blades. There are rip blades, crosscut blades, and then combination blades. The difference is the size of the teeth. Okay, so blades with more or less or fewer teeth that are larger, those are considered rip blades. A rip blade means that you're cutting, if you're cutting like a 2x4, you're cutting with the length of the 2x4. That would be ripping. Then the crosscut, then you're going to have fewer teeth and they'll be smaller. Okay, so I'm going to show you a couple, some different types of blades. So here's a 24 tooth. This is a 10-inch 24 tooth blade. You can see that the carbide tips, and then it's got this big open space in front of it. That open space is where the sawdust will collect until it can clear the wood and throw it out. Okay, so this one would be considered a rip blade. Next one, here's a 30 tooth blade. Again, it has the big areas for catching the sawdust in them, and then it's got these, look real close, you got there's lines that are cut into these. That's to keep the blade flat. Okay, So this one, 30-tooth blade, would still be considered a rip blade. Okay, the next one is a 40-tooth blade. Now this one's getting into that combination area. It's got multiple teeth, they're smaller. The area for collecting the sawdust is smaller. So this 40-tooth blade would cut either cross cut or rip. Okay, if you're working with harder woods, this would probably suffice to cut most hardwoods across the grain. Okay. All right, then we get up to a 50-tooth blade. Now here's the 50-tooth blade. You see this got the small gaps, and then it's got a big gap. Small gaps, big gaps. This would be considered a true combination blade because it's got multiple teeth. It's got the small gaps. It's got the large gaps for more material. So if you have a softer wood, then they got the big gaps to collect the material. If you're needing to cut a harder material, you got more teeth. So that's a 50-tooth blade. And then the last one would be this 60-tooth blade. So you can see that this would be used for harder woods. Another thing, if you're cutting plywood that has a good veneer on it, you want to make sure that you're using a blade with a lot of teeth so that it doesn't rip up the veneer on your expensive plywood. Okay, so you want to use a blade that's got at least 60 teeth, and you can get them with a lot more teeth. I just don't have any right now, so this would be considered a crosscut blade. All right, so those are the different types of saw blades, general purpose saw blades. Here's another type of saw blade. This one is called a dado blade. In this case, you have two blades, and then you have these spacers. So if you need to spread them apart a little more, these are 1/8 inch spacers. So these go between the two blades, and you can put as many spacers in there, these bigger ones, and then to fine tune it, you use these little washers so that you can cut your dados, your rabbets, and your grooves the correct width. Okay, so that will fine tune it with these little washers. So this is a dado set, or a dado blade. Okay, so let's talk about one more thing I forgot. Here we have a set of router bits. So they come in a set like this, and they got different round over bits and flattening bits and 45s and all different types of. You got a complete set there of your dado blade, or router blade, or router bits, whichever one you want to call it. Okay, so let's talk about some saws. Of course, everybody knows about the hand saw. Hand saws are determined, the teeth, again, like the other ones, the larger the teeth, they're used for ripping. The smaller teeth are used for crosscut, and they usually say like, oh, it's a 10-point or an 8-point, or that tells me how many teeth per inch the saw blade is. Okay, so that will help you determine what you need your saw for. So these got pretty big teeth. This would be considered a rip saw, okay, because of the size of the teeth. The teeth were smaller and more abundant, then it would be a crosscut saw. Okay. The next one is a back saw. So here's a back saw. It's got this rigid back on it. This one is usually used in conjunction with a hand miter box, so that if you don't want to go out and spend a couple $100 on a miter saw and you only got a few pieces of molding to cut or baseboards or whatever, you can use this back saw with its miter box. They're usually plastic or sometimes they're metal, to cut baseboard and trim like that. Okay. The next one is a coping saw. It has a really fine blade. Now, what is a cope? A cope is where you take one piece of trim and you cut the trim to match up with the the reveal of the other piece. Instead of just cutting them at a 45, you score a line and then you cut along the line so that the two pieces match up really nice. So most houses, they don't do that. They, you know, they're going for speed and not so much the, you know, the looking good. But in more upscale houses, they'll coat their baseboards and other types of moldings. They'll coat them instead of cutting them on 45. So that is a coping saw. Next one is kind of a general purpose saw. There's the old hacksaw. This one's got a blade in it for cutting metal. So you can cut metal, black pipe, copper pipe, PVC pipe, wood. You cut all this kind of a general purpose hacksaw. This is kind of a general purpose saw. So that's a hacksaw. Next one is a compass saw, and this one can be used for cutting soft woods. You know, like if you're cutting one by pine or fir or something, maybe some OSB. This might work for a hole or cutting a board off or something. So this compass saw could be used for drywall also. And then this one, some people call it a drywall saw, which could be called that. This is a compass, or a keyhole saw, excuse me. It's a keyhole saw. So again, it's specifically used for drywall, this one, okay, for cutting drywall, keyhole saw. Okay, that brings us down to a couple of different types of jigs. Okay, the first one is a doweling jig. This is for cutting or drilling dowel holes. So you line and you figure out what size dowel you have, and then you line up the hole size that fits your dowel, and then you clamp this to your material, and you drill your dowels into your material using this jig. So it's got the screw clamp on the back of it, so you can locate it precisely, and you can drill your holes. So this is a doweling jig. Okay, this one is a type of pocket jig. You place your board in here, you lock this down, and then you have a special bit that you drill down through these holes to for cutting your pockets into your boards, so that you can screw your boards together and hide your screws. Okay, so this would be considered a pocket jig. Okay, so this one is called a lock boring jig. So if you want to put a deadbolt on your door and you don't have a deadbolt hole, this jig would be used for that. So you need a Forstner bit to drill the big hole, and then you need a auger bit to drill the hole where the bolt shoots out from. Again, you just clamp it on your door, locate it where you want, and then drill with Forstner bit and your auger bit to drill your two holes. So this would be a boring jig, or a lock boring jig. All right. And the last one I have is this jig right here. Now, it's got single holes, so you could probably use this for a dowels if you wanted to, but it's usually, this one is designed for these tenons. This is a loose tenon, so you would use this to drill holes in both sides of your wood, and then you would cut this tenon off to whatever length you wanted to fit into the two holes that you drilled. Okay, so this one's like 3 holes wide, so you would drill that in there, and then you would cut this off, and it would slide this tenon loose. It's a loose tenon. So this is called a loose tenon jig. A loose tenon jig. Okay. All right, so that covers what I have for you today on this one. So it covers drill bits and saws and saw blades. So, again, as I always say, you want to have the correct tool for the job that you're doing. So there's a lot of different tools out there. Make sure you're using the right ones. Don't cut corners. Okay.